For further analysis, we are joined from Cairo by Mr. Khaled Dawood, the Assistant Editor-in-Chief of Al Ahram newspaper. A very warm welcome, sir, and it's a pleasure to have you with us on this very special day. Sir, how have the political legacies of past presidents, especially Barack Obama and Donald Trump, shaped the current election and the candidates' messaging?
Well, I mean, actually, there is a similarity between the Democratic candidate, former President Barack Obama, and Kamala Harris, that they both are seeking or actually are setting an unprecedented choice for the American people. Mr. Barack Obama was the first African American president to be ever elected in the U.S. History. And right now we have the Vice President Kamala Harris, who's actually not only the first woman, but also a woman candidate, but also the first candidate with a colored background, even a very mixed background, representing a very American story, as her father is from Jamaica and her mom originates from India. So that's kind of the double challenge in terms of both the gender aspect of Miss Harris being the first, if elected, she would be the first woman president, and at the same time being of a mixed race, which even makes her job much more difficult in challenging Donald Trump, who's actually has his own legacy through the 4 years he spent in office between 2016 and 2020. So probably that's a good kind of chance to let American voters consider whether they want another 4 years of Mr. Trump, with all the kind of shortcomings that surrounded his presidency, all the scandals, and of course all the bitterness that came after Trump lost the 2020 elections, something which he does not recognize until today, and actually shaped or made a very key issue in his current campaign against Kamala Harris, the fact that elections were stolen from him, that he is fighting against not just Kamala Harris, but against the Democratic establishment, which he claims has abused the U.S. justice system to kind of prosecute him with at least 4 major cases, all aimed at preventing him from running in the current elections as a Republican nominee in the first place. And all this, of course, the legacy of both candidates, Harris and Mr. Trump, they both add to the excitement and to the intensity of the current elections.
Sir, what impact has the ongoing polarization of American politics have on voter behavior, especially in terms of party loyalty versus voter dissatisfaction?
Well, I mean, actually, you brought up the most actually decisive matter in this current elections, this status of polarization among the American public in general. You're talking almost about a 50-50%. I mean, in all previous elections, there was a chance that pollings before the elections would give a lead to one candidate or the other, even in the last days before the elections. But this one election has been very significant in the fact that up until a few hours ago, actually, I mean, all the outcome has shown either a tie or maybe Harris leading 1 point here or Mr. Trump leading 1 point there. But all they fall in what they call the range of error. So basically, it's been very difficult to make a prediction in which direction this election would go because of the division and the polarization in the American society, which actually many experts on U.S. politics date back to the days when Barack Obama became a U.S. president, becoming the first African-American president. And this probably galvanized the American conservative right. And then came up the populist, Mr. Trump, who managed to actually make a very surprising victory against a veteran Democratic politician, former Secretary of State and former First Lady Hillary Clinton. It was a surprise for everyone. But then actually, instead of being sufficed with ousting him from the White House in 2020, the kind of his own scandals followed up, his language, his rhetoric, added to the divisiveness and the fear, actually. I mean, let me add, beside the parity in the stand of both candidates, the serious fear in these elections about possible violence because of this polarization and the possible repetition of the 6th of January 2021 events, when supporters of Trump were very much raided the U.S. Capitol to prevent the accreditation of Biden's victory, a matter which continues to follow Mr. Trump until today. The Democrats considering that he was committed in inciting violence, and they even sought to put him on trial for this. They failed because of the Supreme Court, but at the same time, the language which Mr. Trump has been using about that he knows, that he's certain that he's going to be a winner, and that if he lost elections, there will be something wrong with the voting system itself. All this adds up to the fears that the current polarization in the American society between liberals, conservative, those who support abortion, those who are against abortion, the attitude towards the economy might end up in some sort of violence, particularly if Trump ended up losing again, because this will most likely mark the end of his career, considering his age at like 78, and how the tables have turned against him. And when he was running against Biden, the entire argument was that he was running against an unfit president who is like the oldest in U.S. history, 82 years old. But right now, he's been suddenly changed, recognizing the shortcomings of Mr. Biden, and he's facing Kamala Harris, who is 20 years younger than him.
Sir, you mentioned the January 6th insurrection and subsequent events. Have you any concerns about election security and democracy influenced voter trust in the electoral process, sir?
Actually, they're very high. I mean, if you've been following the news coming out of Washington, D.C. in particular, I mean, there's been a state of highest alert. I mean, particularly around the symbols of U.S. politics, starting with the White House. We've seen how the walls have been kind of supported, heightened, and as well, of course, the famous U.S. Capitol building, which witnessed the January 6, 2021 events that you are referring to, as well as the Constitutional Court. So all the kind of symbols of U.S. politics and power are now under surveillance by the FBI. There's a similar state of alert in most of the so-called swing states, which are likely to determine the outcome of elections, the 7 famous swing states where basically these states, they change their vote possibly every 4 years, every 8 years, or at least the results are always very close between the two candidates, that it might flip to this side or to that side. So also security is a matter of concern in those states. And I think matters actually would be more worrying if Mr. Trump lost the elections. If you even watch the last speech he made yesterday, he again referred to standing up against a democratic conspiracy, against voting machines that do not follow the wishes of those who actually vote. His repeated warnings about an invasion, illegal immigrants taking part in the voting. I mean, all those kinds of issues, and even some language threatening violence. I mean, he even referred recently to the daughter of former Vice President Dick Cheney, a prominent Republican that decided to support Harris, that, I mean, yes, he wouldn't mind seeing her being shot, or the journalist being shot. So this kind of language adds to the fears of possible violence, particularly if Trump lost the election.
Okay, sir, how are candidates addressing the growing concerns about climate change and environmental policy, especially in battleground states where climate disasters have become more frequent?
Climate change has been definitely important on the agenda of both candidates, but it's not the top issue this time. I mean, again, the top issue this time is the economy, the state of inflation, the increasing prices, and of course, Trump made a big deal out of the immigration issue, and considering it one of the key weaknesses of Vice President Kamala Harris, the matter of crime, considering or accusing the Democrats of being soft on crime. These are the kind of, and of course, subject of abortion that Mrs. Harris has depended highly to mobilize voters on her behalf, particularly women voters. I mean, this is, again, if you look at it, it's between maybe white America that supports Mr. Trump to a large extent, the diverse America, including whites, of course, that are more open, but and might accept a minority representative becoming president. But it's also a divisiveness over major social issues such as abortion and climate change. Because again, as you know, Trump has always been one of those skeptics on the issue of climate change, and one of the first measures actually
Mr.
he took
Khaled
after becoming
Dawood, you made your point clear, sir, and of course we thank you so much for your informative knowledge and for adding to our coverage, sir, the Assistant Editor-in-Chief of Al Ahram newspaper. Thank you for your insight, sir.